Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of our participants who are joining today's webinar. This is a great pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar series that we are calling Aquaculture, Fisheries and COVID-19, the threats and the resiliency of this sector. So as you all know, today we have the first webinar under this series on aquaculture and fisheries. And the first webinar is about COVID-19 impact on shrimp farming and the White-Feces Disease, how the farmers are dealing with it. So just to introduce to all of you about myself and my institute, those of you are the first time attending our webinar series or this first webinar under the series. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to Asian Institute of Technology, which is the institute offering this webinar. Asian Institute of Technology is an international intergovernmental institute of higher learning located in Pathum Thani province in Thailand. This university was established in 1960, and it has been serving as an international premier education institute in the graduate education arena or domain. So what it does from the beginning is it offers graduate education programs in engineering, technology, management, environment, development areas. So under Asian Institute of Technology, there is also Asian Institute of Technology Extension, or in short, we are calling it AIT Extension. And AIT Extension is actually coordinating this webinar for all of you. My name is Mohammad Zakir Hossain. I am working with Asian Institute of Technology and AIT Extension. So it's again an honor and a pleasure to welcome you all to this first webinar under this series. Together with me, we have the main presenter or speaker with me. Many of you are very much familiar with him. He's Dr. Chalor Limsu-Wan, a Thai nationality and a very well-known person in the area of aquaculture, shrimp farming, and the disease and the health management. I will come back to introduce him later on. Together with me in this welcoming session, I have Dr. Jonathan Shaw, our Executive Director of AIT Extension of Asian Institute of Technology. And also I have my colleagues from AIT and AIT Extension assisting me to coordinate and to moderate this webinar. So with that, I know that people will keep continuously joining this webinar. So let me just talk a little bit about the rules or how you are going to participate in these webinars. You are all going to watch and listen these webinars from us or from our side. And I believe you are all having this option in front of you called Q&A, question and answer, and the chat box. So you will be requested to ask any question in the written format in this box called Q&A. So all the questions that you might have for today's specific webinar, you can put it there. Some of you can also write in the chat box, which we will also try to follow and answer. And at the same time, we are actually streaming this webinar through our AIT Extension Facebook page. So those of you who are watching through the Facebook page, you can also write questions there, and we will try to bring all these questions and get answer from our speaker today. So with that, at this moment, I like to invite our Executive Director, Dr. Jonathan Shaw, to welcome you all for this webinar series and this specific webinar. Over to you, Dr. John.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Jakir, for your excellent introduction. Good afternoon, Dr. Chalor. A very great pleasure to welcome you back to AIT and to work with you on this webinar series, and a very warm welcome to all of our participants on this to this first webinar in the webinar series on aquaculture, fisheries, and COVID-19, resiliency and post-pandemic strategies. Well, post-pandemic seems a little bit optimistic to me to start with. I don't think we're quite yet at the post-pandemic stage. One of the extraordinary things about the pandemic that has so far gone more or less unnoticed across the world is the fact that food chains have largely continued to deliver as they were delivering before. So even as the pandemic and COVID-19 have wreaked considerable devastation in many domains of our life, we've actually been able to sustain food production systems very well. I think this is a little opportunity to peek behind the scenes and to learn a little bit of some of the challenges that industries, aquaculture and agriculture face. And particularly we're focused on the White-Feces Disease, we're focused on shrimp farming, but this is perhaps an opportunity for all of us to reflect a little bit on the tremendous work that is done behind the scenes in ensuring that food security has not been jeopardized during these most challenging times. As I said, moving forward, we can start talking about post-pandemic. At the moment, globally, the number of infections continue to increase and the number of deaths continue to rise. And therefore, it's certainly premature to suggest that we're in the post-pandemic stage. But what this means from the perspective of our seminar is that the stresses and the demands on different food industries is only going to increase from this point onwards. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome all of our colleagues to the webinar series. I'd like to welcome you to this first webinar on COVID-19 impact on shrimp farming and the White-Feces Disease, how the farmers are dealing with it. And I wish all the participants a very enjoyable, a very successful and a very interactive session this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jonathan Shaw. Thank you very much for this warm welcome to all of us and all the participants who are attending to this webinar. Just to bring back to the webinar and the webinar series that we are calling Aquaculture, Fisheries, and the COVID-19 Resiliency and the Post-Pandemic Strategies. As John has mentioned, I think the post-pandemic is a word that we are far away. I would like to put it in this way, because if you look at the world statistics and the data, the curve is still rising. We have so far more than 18 million infected people globally, more than 700,000 deaths globally. If you look at the Asia, India is now ranked number 3 in the world in terms of number of infection. Bangladesh, Pakistan are within the top 20 countries in terms of number of infection. Many countries are still rising sharply. And then, of course, there are some countries like Thailand, Hong Kong, Japan, Vietnam made really progress in containing the virus. And again, we have been observing the second wave. Probably you have noticed that Hong Kong, Japan, and Vietnam are those countries who are actually facing the second wave. Thailand has been still a fortunate country so far, like the country in New Zealand we have been hearing. Vietnam was a champion in managing or containing the virus, but they have also observed the second wave. So this is probably the scenario globally and in the regionally. And this COVID-19 has brought lots of challenges, lots of disruption in our daily life, including the activities that we need to do in the farming business like shrimp farming and aquaculture. So To bring a little context about COVID-19 impact in aquaculture, specifically in shrimp farming, if you look at the industry and the impact that COVID-19 has brought, the FAO terminology, if I like to bring it here, they said COVID-19 has brought immediate and enormous challenges in this field of aquaculture, including the shrimp farming. It's a sector which is producing currently 5 million metric tons of shrimp globally. It has direct employment of 5 million people and indirect employment of another 5 million people who are employed in the different supply chain and the value chain activities of this venture. But the impact that has brought, as FAO has mentioned, is enormous. We probably all know what are those impacts. I'm not going to repeat those, but generally understanding is there is a lot of disruption in the transportation, and that has actually brought a lot of challenges in the sector. What it means that we understand that we need good quality inputs for the farming ventures or for shrimp farming, including the good quality brood stock, good quality feed ingredients. Those have been disrupted in most of the countries, and that has actually brought a lot of challenges for the farmers. Then if you go to the production side, yes, there are production, but production have been disrupted, have been reduced. Farmers, because of many reasons that they have faced because of the coronavirus or the COVID-19. We have job cuts. So as you heard, this industry is employing 10 million people. We do not have a right figure how many people have lost job from this sector, but probably a lot if you go to country-specific statistics. I think with that, I like to bring our main speaker to speak about the specific topic, and the specific topic for today's webinar 1, if you have noticed that we are calling it webinar 1, because this is under the AIT webinar series on aquaculture, fisheries, and COVID-19. Under this is the webinar 1, which is COVID-19 impact of shrimp farming and the White-Feces disease, and how the farmers are dealing with it. So we have brought probably the right person to talk about, and I like to introduce now to Dr. Chalor Limsuwan. As I told at the beginning, I think it is really not very required to introduce him to all of you. People who are in this business, in shrimp farming and aquaculture, know him very well. Dr. Chalor Limsuwan probably is one of the most well-known and the practical shrimp farming experts in Thailand or from Thailand. He is known globally. Since 1987, you can actually see that he has been attending conferences and seminars globally, from Asia to Latin America to North America, and sharing his knowledge and sharing his experiences, how to deal with shrimp farming ventures and how to manage the health and the disease issues for shrimp farming. Just to talk a little bit about his career, that he has a very long teaching and research career, which is almost 30 years long. He has been associated with the topmost agricultural university of Thailand, called Kasetsart University, specifically with the faculty of fisheries. So there he's teaching for more than 30 years. He has supervised more than 100 students, doing lots of research in different aspects and different areas of shrimp farming and aquaculture. He has published lots of articles in different magazine, newspapers, and almost 200 research papers on shrimp culture management. So that's a huge credibility for Dr. Chalor Limsuwan. Dr. Chalor Limsuwan obtained his PhD and the postdoctoral research in fish pathology from Auburn University in Alabama, United States of America. And one of his key roles that he had served for 10 years in Thailand is the committee called Research Committee on Agricultural and Biological Science under the National Research Council of Thailand. During 2006 to 2016, Dr. Chalor has served for this committee, which is a very prestigious committee, and the National Research Council of Thailand is, of course, the most prestigious research institute in Thailand. So I think with that, I like to welcome Dr. Chalor to say a few words before starting his presentation, Dr. Chalor. And before that, once again, I like to remind all of our participants who have joined later on that at the beginning I was telling that you have the option to ask questions. So please look at the Q&A box and the chat box. Please try to write your queries, your questions there, and we will try to bring all these questions to Dr. Chalor to answer. And those who are watching the webinar through AIT Extension Facebook page, please feel free to write questions there. We have colleagues here to help me to bring all those questions to me as well. So thank you very much at this moment, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Chalor to start his presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sagi. Good afternoon once again from Thailand, and good afternoon for everyone that for live broadcast from AIT Extension Program. It's the first time, actually it is the first time since COVID-19 pandemic. We don't have any seminar in Thailand and other country. Normally I have at least 2 or 3 seminars every week in Thailand or almost every month outside the country. But during COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, that's not only shrimp industry, the whole world, all the whole world industry already affected by this COVID-19 pandemic. So I think in shrimp industry, for today, I would like to focus the globally impact from this virus. And I would like to focus on White-Feces, because for White-Feces, I think is the main one. That's the main problem in this region, not in Latin America, but since Asian countries is the almost 70% or 80% of the whole world production are from Asia. Okay, I would like to talk in 3 topics about the effect of the COVID-19 on shrimp industry. And then for the second topic, I will go to the major disease during the pandemic from January until last month. And the last one, how to manage or how to prepare for the upcoming crop during pandemic. Okay, now, as you know that from January, pandemic only start in China. China only locked down the country in January. So from January, in Thailand already have an outbreak, second from China. If you consider that outside China, Thailand is number 1 during January. Thailand have 17 people positive with COVID-19. At that time, China number 1, Thailand number 2. So during that period, China locked down the country. So only affect the production in Thailand because most Thai farmers export live shrimp to China. And once China closed down or locked down the country, we cannot export. So at that time, Thailand barely affected by lockdown the country from China. At that time, I called my friend from Ecuador. This lockdown the country from China have any effect on Ecuadorian shrimp farmer? The answer from my friend is at that time in January, still don't have any, not seriously affect from lockdown from China. But later on, the whole world got serious problem because every country locked down. So when we make the calculation from January up to May, we find out around 20 to 30% of production going to be gone. It means production going to be less than last year compared to a year before. From this year, the first half compared to first half of last year. So we make the calculation that around 20 to 30% of shrimp production will be lower than last year because of pandemic. Indonesia, India, during that period cannot stock. They reduce stocking PL because of when you cannot transport or import your broodstock into your country, you cannot produce the post-larvae. So you cannot stock. So during that period, both Thailand is not serious problem because for stocking, but for India, Indonesia, they have a problem because once Chinese lock down the country, the price go down, shrimp price go down drastically. So really affect, and people scared to stock. So people delay stocking. So in India, Indonesia, Thailand, during that period, they don't stock. They're waiting for the price going up. So price start going up in May. So in May, so it means stocking period delay. Like in India should be, the stocking time should be in April. So that now they're stocking in June. So the production going to go out this month or next month. So we will see what the price is going to be. So for my estimation is that around 20 to 30% of shrimp production is gone because the shrimp price is very low during the early period and picking up in May. But right now, still not very good. So if you look for the problem, 30%, 20 to 30% of shrimp production will be gone. But the demand from US, from China, from EU should be reduced by 5%. During the first half of this year, I would like to focus only Thailand. Number one problem that we are facing now, White-Feces. In India, you call white gut. Some other countries, they may call White-Feces syndrome. They don't call White-Feces disease. Up to you. If you including disease, because you identify ESP or Vibrio bacteria, okay, you can call disease. But if you look for the clinical side, you may call White-Feces syndrome, up to you. But number one, still White-Feces. Number two, white spot syndrome virus. So this virus still around in Thailand. The third one is early mortality syndrome or happen. So in some countries they call happen, some countries they call EMS. But for most shrimp farmers in Thailand, they prefer EMS because it's easy to pronounce, easy to call the name. Okay, now this is White-Feces. I will go back to this White-Feces, how to manage in Thailand. Okay, now as you can see that on your left hand side, this is the normal shrimp. You will have the gut not turn into whitish color. On the right hand side is the white gut. You can see that the full gut completely white. This one is a really in severe case. Okay, now the second is major disease for the first half of this year in Thailand is a white spot syndrome virus. You may wonder why white spot syndrome virus seen outbreaks everywhere in Thailand. Because in Thailand now, most farm, they're changing a lot of water. Most farm don't use closed system anymore. Most farm try to use recirculating system, but they change a lot of water. When you change a lot of water, you have to pump water from outside into your farm. If you don't rest enough or you don't treat or to eliminate carrier, you easily get this infection by this virus, white spot syndrome virus. That's why white spot syndrome virus really severe in Thailand. Second form, White-Feces. Okay, this one, the first one, the early one is black tiger shrimp. This one for white shrimp, you can see white spot under the carapace. Okay, now we still have EMS in the country. Believe it or not, we have EMS for a long time. Still now we have EMS. So for EMS, you can see very easy. You don't have to send the sample to the lab to use PCR to check. You just look for the stomach and hepatopancreas with very pale color. You can see on the left-hand side. For the right-hand side is a normal, healthy shrimp. You can see that's very dark stomach and hepatopancreas. Okay, now, for during pandemic, for COVID-19, you have heard that China reject product from Ecuador and China reject salmon from Norway because of the packing, not because of this animal is a carrier, because of contamination. So during the pandemic of COVID-19, as you can see, Dr. Sagi already mentioned, now in Asia, in India, Indonesia, Philippines, you can see rising of the positive for COVID-19. So it means that we can have some worker that working in shrimp farm that positive for COVID-19. And then the contamination on the box, on the outside packaging, not in shrimp. But once you export to the, let's say to the China or US or EU, when they find out some people got infection because from working in that area, they can trace back where it come from. So it may come from the contamination on the box or from the packing, something. As already mentioned that the shrimp from Ecuador. Okay, now you can see this one already post that Chinese custom detect coronavirus in frozen South American shrimp. Actually, shrimp is not a carrier for this virus, but people who got positive for COVID-19 working in the cold storage and packing. So the contamination of virus can be on the box, on outside the product. So this should be in concern now because you can see now in Brazil, in Ecuador, in Peru, that one in Latin American country, a lot of infection is going on. As you can see now in Latin American country, now the weather is, the temperature is go down. So it means the season is now a little bit cooler than normal. So you can see more outbreak. So for COVID-19 in Latin America, I think it should go for a long time. And the same thing in Asia, you can see that in India, Indonesia, Philippines, you can see the rising of the positive number of COVID-19 now. So how can we do? I think now we have to more concern on how to work, because 80 to 90% of shrimp production in Asia for export. In India, in Thailand, Indonesia, we have domestic consumption maybe less than 70%, 80% for export. So if we let some of the people who get infection with COVID-19 working on the farm, we may have the contamination similar to salmon, similar to shrimp from Ecuador. So this should be in concern for shrimp production along the chain from larvae, from hatchery, from the farm level, from the cold storage. So for the whole chain should be clean, should be free from COVID-19. Okay, I like to see similar to this picture. Now I try to request every farm in Thailand, during your sourcing the site on the table, please wearing the mask. Please use the glove wearing the mask. Try to protect contamination. In case of you have positive for COVID-19, but no symptom, asymptomatic. So when you don't have any symptom, you don't feel that you get positive for virus, but you're still working. At the same time, you can spread the disease. You don't spread the disease to the shrimp, but the contamination during working in a shrimp farm, living like in this picture. So now I would like to request all of the shrimp farm all over the world, please be more concerned about contamination from workers to shrimp product for the whole chain. Otherwise, we will have the problem for exporting in the future. Okay, now, if you're working around in Bangkok, I think in Thailand, almost 100%, everyone go outside the house, wear the mask, wash your hand, wear the mask. So this one is that common practice, we should do it. And temperature checking as well. So now, if we do not practice these three, washing the hand, temperature checking, and wearing the mask, we can see more and more contamination from shrimp product around the world going to the importing country. So this is the main thing I want to say. Now I would like to go back to White-Feces. For White-Feces, that's why I want to talk about White-Feces or emphasize on White-Feces because in India, Indonesia, Vietnam, China, Thailand, Malaysia, this is a major shrimp production for the whole world. So this Asian country has been facing White-Feces disease or white gut problem in the past 4 or 5 years. It's not just this year. We have more and more problem with White-Feces during 4 or 5 years already, and still now. So I think insist, in my opinion, that what went wrong? Why we have more White-Feces? At the same time, we got more, or we get better management every year. As you can see now, I think farm get more experiences for shrimp farming. They do shrimp farming more and more. They learn the mistakes from mistake every year. But we still have more and more White-Feces. What's going on? In my opinion, I think believe that we have so many change in feed. I mean the quality of feed. When we start shrimp industry, around 34 years ago, I started shrimp industry around 34 years ago. During that period, we used feed meal 35%. Now, feed meal 5%. Some countries 10%. Some countries 15%. I understand that. I do understand that we cannot go back to increase fish meal to 25, 30%, 35% anymore because we already overfishing using too much feed meal already. So in the near future, every country try to lower protein from fish meal and replacing with some other protein, particularly from soybean meal. So in my opinion, and we already proved in the lab, in the field, we do a lot of research. The White-Feces is related to both feed. When you have a lot of soybean meal, you have a lot of anti-nutrient factor such as lectin, beta-glucosamine, and undigested oligosaccharide like raffinose, stachinose. So when you have all of that, that can cause the microvilli in the hepatopancreas slough off. And then you get vibrio infection. If you have a lot of Mycobacterium ESP, this one will trigger more White-Feces. So you can see White-Feces faster than you don't have ESP. But if you feed, okay, as I already mentioned, we cannot go back to use 35% feed meal anymore. So we have to use whatever we have now. So in Thailand, about 5 to 8% of the feed meal now. That was claimed by the feed meal company. Okay, we accept that. So now I want to give you some information that the farm that survive in Thailand with White-Feces, what they are doing. Almost 100%, every farm, they select the post larvae very well. They want to make sure that, number one, they don't have ESP, Mycobacterium. Number one, they want to make sure that no ESP infection. Number two, during the growth period, they try to minimize the overfeeding. It means they try to control the feeding program. Make sure that you are a little bit underfeeding, not overfeeding. So when you minimize the loss of feed, it means you be able to control the organic matter, because leftover feed finally been increased organic matter and blooming the vibrio bacteria that cause White-Feces, particularly when you have a lot of ESP infection at the beginning. So by doing that, not enough. First, you try to select good larvae free of ESP. Secondly, you try to minimize the organic matter by controlling the feeding program. Thirdly, they use a lot of probiotic bacteria use a lot of probiotic bacteria, particularly Bacillus species. They fermented the feed. They ferment bacteria at least 4 hours before mix up with the feed and then give to the shrimp to prevent anti-nutrient factor that may be left some in the feed or can prevent viral bacteria in the gut. So they do 3 things. And the 4th one, during the culture period, they minimize the organic matter in the pond. They detect the total organic matter in the pond during the grow-up period. The farm that survive White-Feces or do very well or do quite well during the first half of this year, they control total organic carbon, TOC, total organic carbon. But they have like a test kit to check. At the 1st month, okay, TOC should be this level. The 2nd month should be this level. The 3rd month should be this level. If you can manage the total organic carbon or organic matter in the water or in your pond, you can control the variable number. So when you can manage all of this, you can mitigating White-Feces problem and loss. So I think this information, if you check carefully, should be the same as in a farm in your country that already do very well. As I mentioned once more, every farm use probiotic or some farm, big farm, they have speaking feed. It means they can request feed mill to make the feed that's suitable for the shrimp. So but that not a whole lot, just a few farm, big farm. But most farm that survive in Thailand, small one and medium size, they use a lot of probiotic during the growth period. So I want to mention that just for my talk today, since the time is limited. So I want to stop now and then just prepare for the question in case of you want to ask some question, please written down, and then Dr. Sagi will give the question for me so I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Chalor. So our next part is question and answer. And I think we have received a couple of questions. So I'm not sure, Achan Chalor, if you are looking at the question, but I can read the questions for you.
Please read for me.
Okay, thank you. So we have a couple of questions from our participants from Bangladesh, from India, and we also have probably question in the chat box as well. So I will try to bring all of these, given that we have still 15 minutes to go. So there is this first question from Dr. MD Shirazul Islam from Bangladesh, I understand. So his question is there any differences in shrimp infections or disease trend due to the pandemic? Is there any differences in shrimp infection or shrimp disease trend due to pandemic? Yeah, the answer, please.
No difference. We still have the same disease before we have COVID-19 or during the pandemic of COVID-19. We still have the same disease. White-Feces, white spot syndrome virus, and EMS in our country.
Okay.
No difference.
So the answer is COVID-19 specifically has not bring any specific disease to the shrimp farming. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Achan Chalor. The next question from Dr. Vishnu Kiran Manam. He has asked a couple of questions. So the first question from him is, EHP is not associated with White-Feces as per current research articles. There is no clarity between the EHP and White-Feces association. Justify, please.
Okay. 3 or 4 years ago, we do a research. If you have only ESP, ESP alone, you cannot trigger White-Feces in the lab. If you have only ESP, you cannot trigger or try to get the White-Feces in the lab. But if you have a lot of ESP and in the grow-out pond, you have Vibrio bacteria and you will get White-Feces. So it means you have to have both in the same time.
Thank you, Achan Chalor. The next question is again from Dr. Vishnu Kiran Manam. And the question is, causative agents of White-Feces are Vibrios, Gregaphins, and microvilli. Any other agents are responsible for White-Feces?
Okay, I would like to emphasize a little bit this. Anti-nutrient factor from soybean meal will damage microvilli. When larvae, microvilli cannot work, cannot function. So it means they cannot utilize the feed. So it means you will get more level of feed. That one is good food for Vibrio bacteria. And now Vibrio infection come later. After you see microvilli slough off. We proved in the lab already. And some publication already come out, but mostly in Thai. Okay.
Thank you, Achan Chalor. Next question is still from Mr. Vishnu Kiran. I think we have answered to this question already. How can White-Feces can be controlled? I think you have already have given elaborated answer to this question. So I will go to the next question again from him. In India, White-Feces are seen at 35 to 40 days of culture and recover by 50 to 55 days of culture. Okay, I think this is a comment, not a question. I don't
Yes.
know what is his question. But
yeah, I agree with you. Because of during that period, a lot of organic matter already accumulation to the point that a lot of Vibrio increasing. If you want to prevent during that period that you first see the clinical sign of White-Feces, if you remove organic matter out, you can see that the color of water, or if you have some test kit that can detect the total organic carbon in the pond, and you can remove some waste out to minimize the organic matter, so you can minimize the Vibrio number, and you can prolong the White-Feces. Instead of 35 days, you can go. I mean, it's before you start to see the White-Feces, it may take longer. At that time, your shrimp become bigger. It means you got a little bit late of the White-Feces. Instead of 35 days, maybe you see at the 50 day or 60 day. But if you keep all the organic matter in the pond all the way, you may not see at all.
okay. He has also two other questions. I will take one question from him and then go to the next person because we have a time limitation. So his next question is, Vibrios cannot be controlled by probiotics as the Vibrios are outnumbered when compared to the beneficial bacteria.
Yes, it's correct. If probiotic is correct, I mean the probiotic cannot fight against bacteria. So you need to do 2 or 3 things. First one, try to minimize the good food for Vibrio by control organic matter, control the feed. Secondly, you have to, keep the shrimp healthier. It means probiotic can digest some of the leftover anti-nutrient factor from soybean meal. So it means microvilli will not badly damaged by anti-nutrient factor. So it means larvae will be healthier or stronger. So if you minimize or control Vibrio number in the pond, it means it can balance. That the mean. But he's correct. probiotic bacteria cannot fight against Vibrio. You have to do both. Probiotic that make shrimp stronger, healthier. And then you can manage to minimize organic matter to control or lower the number of Vibrio bacteria.
Thank you, Dr. Chalor. I will go to the next person. This is Mahfouza Ella, who have asked, would you please tell us about the farmers' livelihood and the health vulnerabilities? I think, yeah.
Well, in Thailand, I think that so far up until now, I think the government do very well. Every sector try to protect themselves. Every family protect themselves. It means that if you're not in Thailand, so I don't know some other country how the outbreaks go very, very fast. So I think I cannot think about some other country because during the COVID-19, I cannot go out. I cannot go out, so I don't know. So I cannot answer. But in Thailand, I think every farm now, they're really afraid about COVID-19. You go everywhere, that people keep washing their hand, have the gel, everyone has it. So before they, you can see now they sit very far away because the government don't allow to have the big seminar that you can sit side by side, things like that. So I think I don't know how long we can keep it this way. I don't know. I cannot answer. But in Thailand so far, we don't have the problem. But the problem is coming. You know why? Because shrimp industry require the labor, the worker from Myanmar, from Laos, from Cambodia, and they cannot come into Thailand because we have state quarantine for 14 days. And 14 days, the company, the farm had to pay. So each person, 24,000 baht. One person, 24,000 baht. They cannot do it. It's cost too much. So now shrimp farm don't have enough worker. The same thing in Malaysia. Most Malaysian industry or people working in the palm tree, palm, things like that. Most of the labor from workers from in Malaysia are from Bangladesh and from Indonesia. They cannot get in the country. So now it means this is the big problem for almost every industry in Thailand. We lack of enough employer.
Thank you, Dr. Chalor. I think we have two quick questions I'd like to take, a little bit technical. Arthrea has asked Dr. Chalor how to measure CN ratio to know the ratio is optimal.
Most farm in Thailand we don't do a bird flock system. I can tell you that most farm in Thailand they don't use a bird flock system. So for CN ratio is good for bird flock system. Most farm in Thailand we don't do it, but for sure we use a lot of bacteria to make sure that we have enough bacteria to digest organic matter in the water and enough bacteria that to digest something in the gut or to prevent of intestinal infection from Vibrio. So we do both. But for CN ratio, it depends on what kind of nursing Lawi that are you, what kind of procedure are you using? But in Thailand, we don't use bird flock system. We don't use bird flock, so we are not much concerned of CN ratio.
Thank you, Achan. I think we have another interesting question from Haitam, who has asked, which is safer for shrimp farming, RAS system or open ponds?
If your farm is big enough, please do RAS system. Please do it for environment. So in the near future, I think our customer, the import country, will request to use RAS system for sure in the future. So I like RAS system.
Okay. I like to take one question from our chat box. I think our friend from Myanmar have asked Mr. Jo Yin Min how to protect from food safety for local consumer. I think we have already covered this in the presentation, but if you could repeat few.
I think people that go to work for the food industry should take the temperature test before working every day. You have to record. If the temperature above 37.5 degrees Celsius, don't let him work and check for COVID-19. If the temperature is past temperature test, water hand, working. So every company should have the procedure for their worker to make sure that you can prevent contamination from worker to the product and to the customer in any level, not only for export. I want to see domestic consumption at the same quality as for exporting consumer.
Thank you. We have an interesting question very specific to white-feces, and anonymous participants have asked, there are instances of white-feces disappearing on its own when there is water exchange, including the rainfall. Why that so?
Why? Okay. During the rainy season, let's say you have a continuous rain for a couple of days. Rain temperature around 24 to 25 degrees Celsius. A lot of rain poured out into the pond with lower temperature. So normal temperature in the pond is 28 to 30 degrees Celsius. Shrimp eat very well. So by rainwater with lower temperature and shrimp will feeding for shrimp will drop drastically. The feeding rate will drop maybe 20 to 30 or 40%. It depends on how much it rain. Even shrimp farmers that have a lot of experiences cannot reduce the feeding amount at time. So it means even you are really good managed for feeding program, you still have some feed left over. So one, a lot of accumulation of feed and left over. One, you get sunshine. That organic matter will produce a lot of blooming of phytoplankton, and you get the shrimp on it sick because a lot of drastic change in the amount of bloom of phytoplankton and a lot of bloom from viral bacteria. This correlation you can see. You don't see the white-feces during the raining day. You see after you get the sunshine. So it's a little bit prolonged. Like during a rainy day, you don't see anything change. But once you get a good weather, you see. That's the main reason that I really explained.
Thank you, Dr. Chalora. I think we are going to take one last question now. And this is again from an anonymous participant. The question is, white-feces does not occur in every farm or even in every pond on a farm. The feed is the same, but manifestation of white-feces can be different. How do you relate feed to white-feces syndrome?
Even in a different pond, you mean the same farm. Different. Soil quality, everything not the same. You can see side by side in the neighbor pond, side by side, you can see the water color different. Even you stock at the same lawi. I make a lot of observation on this. Side by side, you can see the left hand side, right hand side, the same management, same water quality, but the soil quality a little bit different, make a difference for the whole thing, particularly for the consistency of phytoplankton bloom. You can see the pond that have the inconsistent of phytoplankton, that one will easily get a White-Feces. But the pond that you have consistency of the phytoplankton bloom, it means you'll be able to maintain watercolor at the point that you want. You will not see the White-Feces. So even side by side pond in the same farm. That's the answer.
Thank you very much, Achan, Dr. Chalor. I think that's the end. Because of the time limitation, we have to end the Q&A session here. But we will try to make sure that we will answer the other questions using other means like email or other means. So thank you very much, Dr. Chalor, for the wonderful presentation and responding to all the questions to our participants. I think it was wonderful. And because of the time limitation, we have to end the webinar right now. We actually have targeted for 1 hour, and now it has already passed. So just to bring to the last part of the webinar, I think there is not a big necessity to summarize that what has been discussed today, but I think probably if I would like to repeat just 3 points that Professor Chalor has been talked during his talk and also during the Q&A session. So there is a clear evidence that there are almost around 20 to 30% of drop in terms of shrimp production. And there is a drop also in the import from the countries who are importing the shrimp product. In terms of disease, during the same period, I think we are facing almost the same disease that were before the COVID-19 came. So there is no difference in terms of COVID-19 pandemic period and before. We are still facing the similar disease. I think the second point is many people also have asked this, that whether there is a risk or contamination risk of COVID-19 in the shrimp body, or there is a risk for the farmers or the laborers. But I think it has been already cleared from this presentation that there is no risk in terms of contamination from the animal itself or from the shrimp, but there is a risk if the farmers or the workers are bringing the virus from other sources and contaminating the shrimp as a product. That Dr. Chalor has already given an example that the coronavirus was found in the shrimp product that came from Latin America to China. I think the third most important point that Dr. Chalor has mentioned, that how to control the White-Feces disease. And he has given a couple of instructions like choosing or selecting the good quality seed is very, very important. So the good quality seed is very important. And then we have to look at the control feeding, or the feeding environment is one important area that we have to look, because there are some good practices like farmers are using probiotics, fermenting with the feed before they apply it, but they are also using the control feeding. And I think the word that Dr. Chalor mentioned is reduced feeding is much better than the overfeeding. I think another important point that Dr. Chalor has emphasized is the feed ingredients, and which is very important to deal with all the diseases, including the White-Feces and the white spot baculovirus plus other diseases. That the feed ingredients, where he has mentioned that there is a tendency and the general practice that we are replacing the fish meal from the feed ingredients by other means like soya milk or many other kinds of meal. And I think this is one of the reasons that we need to look at, probably to reduce the risk of this White-Feces disease. I think these three important points I just would like to reiterate. And with that, I like to bring you all to the next. So what next? As we have heard that this is a series, the webinar series on aquaculture and fisheries, which means that we're going to have probably many webinars in near future from now until the end of this year or until the pandemic period is gone or run away or everything become normal. Or if we need to go for the new normal, whatever it is. So there will be webinars and we will be expecting all of you to join. And for that, probably you will need to keep an eye on our advertisement for the webinars and keep regular contact with us. So this is one thing that you can be, of course, getting all the queries and all the doubts that you have raised today. And I suppose there are still much more doubts about dealing these ventures, about dealing of shrimp diseases and the health issues in the shrimp farm. So for that, AIT Extension and AIT has other services. For example, we are considering to run training programs since COVID-19 has actually restricted our travel and we are not really allowed to go for our business as usual type travel. So we are going to run online training at the beginning, and then followed by the online training, there will be a blended training program. What is mean that you will have training program where you will have the online component and also the face-to-face component, or in this case, for example, we need to have a field component that you need to go to the field and learn from the fields and also different laboratories and different institutes. So those of you who have attended AIT's training and capacity building program probably are already familiar, but those of you who are not familiar, for you that the information that we are going to run two different kinds of training program specific to aquaculture and more specific to shrimp farming, from the very basic training to very advanced training. And for those training, we are going to run those training, I think, using two different modalities. One will be the online, completely online training, and then another will be the online plus face-to-face or online plus the field component. So that is, of course, you probably need to look at for your future needs from our side. And then, of course, as we are an university and we have a very strong aquaculture department at AIT for last 30, 40 years, and the AIT is giving degree programs like master's degree in aquaculture and aquatic resource management, aquaculture technology, very specific to shrimp farming and very specific form of aquaculture, and also integrated agriculture and aquaculture, many different areas. So we do have that option. If some of you are interested for our graduate education program like master's degree and PhD, of course, you have that option as well. So I think with that, I like to conclude this webinar here, giving a very special thanks to all of you attending from different countries, from different parts of the world. Thank you very, very much for your time, for your patience, for attending this webinar. And as I said, I like to reiterate again that due to the time constraint, we are probably not able to answer all the questions, all the queries that you have actually written. We are very sorry about that, but we will try to bring those answers in other form in next few days. And another thing that this webinar has been recorded and it will be posted in our AIT Extension webpage. So in next few days, this will be available and you will all have access to that as well. With that, I also like to give a big thanks to our main speaker, Dr. Chalor Limsuwan. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Chalor. It's a great pleasure to have you always with us And we would expect you in near future again for maybe another topic, or probably another topic about shrimp health management or shrimp disease management, or more broadly about shrimp culture. Like today, there are many questions came more about farming, but not specifically about the shrimp disease. So we'll expect you, and definitely we will be bringing you back for our online training program and other training program as well. And I think the last but not the least, I like to thanks to all my colleagues from AIT and from AIT Extension who are actually working very hard to materialize this webinar for last few days. And they will be working hard, of course, in future as well to bring other webinars. So with that, once again, thank you very, very much, and a very good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all of you.
Thank you.